3 centuries after the birth of Jesus, one of the most important battles in European history was fought at the foot of this bridge. On the morning of October 28th in the year 312, 2 Roman armies squared off near the Milvian bridge, which crossed the Tiber River from Rome. The stakes were zero-sum. There could be only one victor. The outcome would ensure the triumph of Christianity as the dominant religion in the Western world. The victory would eventually lead to the Virgin Mary's elevation to celestial status as the very Mother of God. Throughout most of the preceding 3rd century of the Common Era, the Roman Empire had collapsed into a violent swirl of bloody fights for the throne. Most of the ambitious men who succeeded in grasping the crown were quickly disposed of, often assassinated by equally ambitious rivals. The Roman Emperor Diocletian had finally imposed a sort of order by setting up a system of 4 co-equal emperors called the Tetrarchy. But the Tetrarchy also degenerated into combative maneuvering of ambitious rivals. On this fateful morning, the man who had proclaimed himself sole emperor, Maxentius, faced the seasoned military leader and nominal co-emperor, Constantine. Constantine the Great won the battle. Within 8 years, he was the sole emperor of the Roman Empire. Constantine also became a convert to Christianity, although the nature and timing of that conversion are still debated by historians and religious authorities. Constantine's conversion is sometimes said to have been inspired by a vision he had seen in the sky. That vision, sometimes said to be a cross and sometimes said to be Jesus himself, assured Constantine that if he followed Christ, the one true God, he would win victory. Vision or no vision, Constantine did undoubtedly take steps that secured the position of Christianity in what was then an almost entirely pagan world. During the first 3 centuries after the death of Jesus, the movement that was to become known as Christianity grew, but it grew slowly. It was essentially a small raft floating in a sea of sometimes tolerant and sometimes violently hostile pagan worship. Most recently, the Emperor Diocletian had instituted repressive violence against the Christian establishment and its worshippers. Properties were seized. Church leaders and congregants were tortured and often killed. In some places, Christians moved their practice to secret locations in forests and in the catacombs of Rome. Constantine changed all that at a stroke. He stopped the oppression and permitted the practice of the Christian religion. Many properties were returned, and more importantly, the religion was allowed to establish an open administrative structure and build churches throughout the empire. Although Constantine did not declare Christianity the official religion of Rome, his actions allowing it to compete on level ground had remarkable consequences. Not the least of those was the church's astounding growth in the 4th century of the Common Era. According to modern analysts, in the year 100 of the Common Era, there were only 7,000 to 10,000 Christians in the entire Roman Empire. That was far less than 1% of the population. When Constantine seized the throne in 312, there were between 3.5 and 4 million Christians. But at the end of the 4th century, there were between 25 and 35 million Christians. That was more than 50% of the empire's population. there would be no going back in the Western world. Constantine took two other bold actions that shaped the course of Western history and the nature of Christianity. First, he moved the seat of the Roman Empire from Rome to a new city he created at the site of the ancient city of Byzantium. He called the new city, appropriately enough, Constantinople. We know it today as Istanbul. Constantinople became the center of Christian governance under Constantine. The emperor took an active interest in the administration of his adopted religion. Like most authoritarian rulers, he had little tolerance for divisive doctrinal conflict. And there were extreme, contentious, and sometimes violent divisions among Christian leaders about the most basic premises of their beliefs. Egyptian Christians, for example, had very different views on the nature of the Virgin Mary than, say, Syrian Christians. Constantine pushed the church leaders to resolve these differences and achieve consensus, often by means of conferences of bishops called councils. The First Council of Nicaea, for example, was convened by Constantine in 325. It hammered out a summary statement of the Church's basic beliefs. They became known as the Nicene Creed. One of the issues remaining to be resolved was the relationship of the Virgin Mary to her son, Jesus, who was decreed to have been both human and God. Was Mary merely the bearer of the human Jesus, or was she, quite miraculously, the bearer of God? That question was settled at the Council of Ephesus in 431. Henceforth, Mary was accepted as the Theotokis, the bearer or mother of God. She is prominent throughout Orthodox liturgy in prayers, hymns, and images. The Orthodox Church in the East believed that although discussion of Scripture could be useful, it was the contemplation of the experience of God that was most important. It was more important than harvesting new perspectives through scholarly analysis. Images such as icons and emotive rituals thus dominated Eastern Orthodox liturgy. Mary, as Theotokis, became central to much of this imagery. Eventually, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and much later Protestant theology would come to different views on the nature of the Virgin Mary and her relationship to Christian worship. In the next episode, we will explore more of the history behind the rise of the Virgin Mary to prominence in Christianity and eventually Islam.